Hello everybody. Today we're going to work on the cell cycle, which I originally learned in high school as mitosis, and now they've realized that mitosis is only a portion of cell division. Okay, so this is how cells actually make more cells. So I created a Google Doc for you guys to take notes in. I will also make a PDF of this particular flip chart. The cell cycle is not exactly something that's very easy to teach virtually, but we're going to give it a shot, okay? All right, so I'm going to skip some of these in interest of time, all right? But what I want you to think about is, do cells grow? Well, they do a tiny bit, okay? But what you have to realize is the reason cells are tiny is because they have to process enough energy, right? They have to get rid of waste, and the larger and larger a cell gets, the more difficult that would be, okay? So instead of making bigger cells, we actually get more cells, all right? So obviously you have greatly increased the number of cells that are in your body from where you were a newborn, okay? So think about it this way. If this is a tiny one-bedroom house and we have a single mom and her kid here, this would be more than sufficient. But if she met somebody else and he had kids and then they had some more kids together, this tiny house would not be appropriate for them anymore, okay? So obviously they would get into a bigger house, okay, which is a bad analogy. But instead of doing that, what cells do basically is make more houses, okay? So we're going to increase the number of cells instead of the size of the cells, all right? Okay, so here's an overview of it. Now this, what we're talking about today, happens in every single cell in your body, any cell that you can name except sperm and egg, okay? It has its own process, which is called meiosis, or some people say meiosis, which we'll do next week, all right? But this is for skin, bone, fat, brain, muscle, small intestine, anything you can name except sperm and egg. And what you end up with are two cells that are absolutely identical to one another. They divide one time, and this is what happens when you grow, or when you make more cells because other ones have died, or when you repair cells, okay? So totally asexual. So in other words, no sperm, no egg, okay? That's a different process, which we'll do next week. All right, so here's the first thing I kind of wanted you guys to write down, and we'll talk about each one of these. And I know this looks extremely complicated, but what I want you to think about is sort of like a football game. You know how we have a first half, which is divided into a first quarter and a second quarter. Then you have halftime, right, which some different events go on in there. And then you have the second half, which would be the third and the fourth quarter, okay? And it can be a basketball game. I don't care what you're thinking about. But as an overview, the cell cycle has three parts to it. It has an interphase section, which is the longest. It has a mitosis section, and then it has a cytokinesis section. And then underneath each one of those, separate events take place. And that's what we're going to go through now. Okay? All right, so interphase. Cells spend about 90% of their life, maybe 95% of their life in interphase. Okay, think of it like intermission between acts of a play or something like that. It's time for the actors and actresses to have a break or change clothes, or for us to go pee, get snacks, whatever, okay? But unlike that analogy, interphase is nothing to do with resting for a cell. Okay, there are a lot of things that are going on. Interphase is split into three sections: a G1, a S, and a G2. Now, you do have to know that exact order for the EOC. Okay, you have to know that it goes in this exact order. So G1 actually stands for gap, but I want you to think of it as growth. Because if this cell is getting ready to split itself in half, it's got to do a little bit of growth. But think about all the ribosomes and mitochondria that it'll need. Because if you're getting ready to split yourself in half, you're going to need proteins and you're going to need energy, big time. Okay, so that's G1. S is the longest and most important part of interphase. That is when DNA is copied. It actually stands for synthesis, right? Which means to create. So then in G2, which stands for gap2, it goes along and checks the DNA to make sure there weren't any mistakes while it was copied. okay? So in your picture on the previous screen here, interphase would be all three of these together, okay? So that would be G1, this would be S, this would be G2. Notice the S phase is absolutely the longest, okay? All right, now, here are some pictures of cells in interphase. It basically looks like a normal resting cell that you and I would look at under the microscope, okay? Here is my diagram of it, and if you're going to take the time to do this, it would be nice, okay? Notice I did 4 colors, and there are 8, 2 of each. That represents 2 copies of DNA. So the important part of interphase is that you know the end result are one cell, right, with one nucleus, but it temporarily has 2 copies of its DNA in it. Because I hope you can see that the overall goal here is we're going to have 2 cells, each with their own copy of DNA, okay? All right, so then the next part of the cell cycle is called mitosis, right? Remember, this is what I learned as the whole thing when I was in high school. Mitosis is further split down into these 4 phases, and I just remember PMAT, Prophase, Metaphase, Anaphase, Telophase. Now, the good news is you guys do not have to know the names of these phases, Prophase, Metaphase, Anaphase, Telophase. You don't have to know them, okay? You don't even really have to know what goes on, what events take place, but you do have to be able to recognize the cells and maybe even put them in the correct order. Okay, so why not go ahead and learn it? All right, so what I tried to do is show you here, each letter represents something that major happens. Okay, I have P for prophase and P for pair up. So, you know, in the previous screen where we had 2 copies of each chromosome, they're going to pair up, okay? And how I want you to think of it as is like if I dumped out a big old bag of like Halloween candy that had 10 or 15 varieties of Halloween candy in it. And I wanted each of you guys to have one of each. The easiest thing for me to do would be to put all the candies together that are similar. So I'd put all the Tootsie Rolls together, all the Dum Dums together, all the bubblegum pieces together, right? And then I can divvy them out. That's exactly what mitosis does. It divvies them out and it divvies them out equally, okay? So have chromosomes pair up, and that is letter E. Notice it's the very first one. Okay, so here's some pictures of cells in prophase. Notice they're paired up. Your nucleus is actually disappearing. That's kind of cool. That gives the cells more room to move around. Okay, and here's my diagram. Notice the reds with red, orange with orange, green with green, yellow with yellow. Okay, all right, now metaphase, middle. This is when the chromosomes line up in the middle. It's kind of like in PE when we played dodgeball. We would all have to line up at center court and have 2 captains on each side, and they would start picking us from the center. Okay, if they're lined up in the middle here, then we can assure that these go this way and these go this way. Okay, and just like the Earth, these are called the poles, and where it lines up in the middle is called the equator. All right, so anaphase. Chromosomes split apart, so A for A, and this is G here, okay? So what happens is one chromosome goes to one pole, the other chromosome goes to the other pole. So this is trying to stop one cell from having too many chromosomes and one cell from having not enough chromosomes. And this stuff here is called the spindle. It's very sticky like a spider web, and it actually pulls the chromosomes apart, okay? All right, now telophase or telophase, some people say, T for 2. At this point, you have 2 distinct nuclei. Okay, you have one cell, but you have 2 nuclei in there, and that's represented by H. See, we're getting very close to the end now. Okay, so here are some cell drawings, and here is my drawing. See how this one cell is getting ready to split itself in half, but we're not there yet, but we do have 2 nuclei here. And notice each one has an exact copy of that particular chromosome. So the end result of mitosis is one cell with 2 nuclei. So we're getting there. Okay? All right, so cytokinesis is the last step of the cell cycle, and this means cell split. So this is when your cell splits apart, and then you end up with 2 identical daughter cells. And guys, this is important. The fact that they are identical and the fact that there are 2. This is what separates mitosis from meiosis. Okay, that is the goal. You want 2 identical cells to replace the ones that have been lost, okay, or damaged, or replacing ones so you can grow, okay? All right, so here are some real cell pictures of cytokinesis. I like this one here. It reminds me of those coconut snowball snack things, okay? But see how the cytoplasm is the last thing to split here. And then you're going to have a complete cell membrane and a complete cell membrane, complete nucleus, and then you end up with 2 identical daughter cells. Okay, so that's what I need you to have for cytokinesis. All right, so just to review real quick, if you think of the cell cycle as 3 distinct parts, interphase, mitosis, and cytokinesis. Interphase is G1, S, and G2, and the end result, 1 cell with double the amount of DNA or double the amount of chromosomes, okay? Mitosis is PMAT, Prophase, Metaphase, Anaphase, Telophase. And the whole point of mitosis is to make 2 nuclei, right? Still 1 cell because we haven't gotten through that final step yet, but there are 2 nuclei, all right? And then cytokinesis, of course, you end up with 2 identical daughter cells. So that's when the cytoplasm and the cell membranes finally split from each other, okay? So here's a diagram of that. Interphase, double DNA. Mitosis, 2 nuclei, still 1 cell. Cytokinesis, 2 distinct cells, okay? All right, so something that you might have to do with that, guys, is actually put them in order, okay? So I would always start with the very simplest one, which would be this one, okay? That is probably interphase, right? Okay, then where you can actually see the chromosomes and they're doubled up, so this would be your prophase, okay? Next is they line up in the middle, right? So this would be your metaphase, all right? And I think we have them in order now, okay? And something else that helps me is if you look at how much the cell membrane is being pinched. I think that kind of helps put them in order also. But notice I didn't have to know the names for these, okay? All I had to do was put them in the order that I thought they ended up in, all right? Okay, so what I'm going to get you guys to do at this point is work on the Google form that goes along with it. I would recommend filling out your notes, okay, because this is a lot of information in a short amount of time. Watch any extra videos that you can on the cell cycle, because when you see these things in motion, it helps a lot, okay? Because remember, this is not just like, you know, how every cell looks. Everything is in motion on the inside, and I think it helps to visualize that, okay? So I'll put some links to other videos out there. Practice on your Google form. We'll actually do more practice on this in next lessons, okay, before we get to meiosis, because this is actually very important. But remember, cell cycle, the goal is to end with 2 cells that are absolutely identical, okay? Make sure you guys email me if you have any questions. I hope you have a great day.